What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Must start and avoid running backs for week 4. I'll be taking a look at each game in this video and be going over the backfield situation for each team. Remember that tomorrow's video is the flex start sit video, so put your start sit questions in the comment section of this one and I'll go over as many of those as I can. If I don't get to your specific question, then you can see my exact rankings as well as a bunch of other stuff at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. All right, let's start things off with the Thursday night football game in Eagles at Packers. Now, on the Eagles side, the only running back you can consider starting is Miles Sanders, and it's going to come down to who else you have. He registered 35 air yards, which was the most of any running back in week 3, and led the team in receiving this past week, while also leading the team in rushing. The problem with him is only the snaps. He's yet to go over 50% of the snaps in a game, and he was punished last week by the Eagles for losing a fumble. They did bring him back into the game in the fourth quarter, and he had a really nice quarter, but it's certainly a risk using him, especially in Lambeau. So again, it's going to depend on what other running backs you have, but he can be used as a flex. On the Packers side, you have to start Aaron Jones. The Eagles have a really good run defense, but the Packers are 4.5-point home favorites, and he has decent receiving upside in this matchup. As for Jamal Williams, I want to see them use him as much as they did last week, again, before I can recommend using him. They said they wanted to even out the snaps. They did that, but I want to see it happen one more time, and maybe a game where Aaron Jones is playing well, because he didn't play that great last week, and so that could have had something to do with it. So I want to see a game where Aaron Jones is playing decently and they still go to Jamal Williams half of the time. But until that happens, I'd keep Williams on the bench. Titans at Falcons is next, and for the Titans, you're of course starting Derrick Henry every single week. For the Falcons, the Titans are a difficult matchup, but they're 4-point home favorites, talking about the Falcons there, and if Ito is going to miss this game, then Freeman is a must start. If Ito plays, then I'd still start Freeman, but he'd be much less of a must start, and Ito obviously needs to stay on the bench regardless of if he's playing or not. Next, we have Browns at Ravens, and for the Browns, Chubb is unlikely to have like a monster game. You know, his line is bad, he's on the road, the Ravens have a really good run defense, he's an underdog. However, he's been used a lot as a receiving back this season, and he does lead the team in green zone touches, and he has the talent to produce in any matchup. So you're obviously starting him regardless of the game environment. Just know he's probably not going to post a really nice score this week. For the Ravens, you're starting Mark Ingram. He's a 1-touchdown home favorite, and while the Browns have a solid defense this year, they're much stronger against the pass than they are the run. With Ingram, he's got the same caveat as always. He will not be catching passes, so he's only going to be valuable in the weeks where he scores a touchdown. This week, he's a pretty good bet to score given their implied total and given how many points they're favored by. Next game is Patriots at Bills, and the Patriots are 7-point road favorites, but my model is predicting this to be a closer game than that, and I have to agree with it. The Patriots have had troubles on the road in Buffalo, and the Bills have looked good ever since late last season. This game sets up a lot better for James White and Rex Burkhead than it does for Sony Michel. The Bills are much stronger against the pass than the run, and while I can see Sony having a nice game if he scores, if he breaks off a long run, he probably only has like a startable performance maybe 30% of the time, and those aren't odds that I like. So I do own Sony Michel in 1 of 3 leagues, and I really don't want to play him, so I'm going to try and find a way to get him on the bench. I would play James White though. Brady does rely on White in these close, grinded out games, and with how good the Bills are at limiting wide receiver production, and with the lack of tight ends in New England these days, White should have a nice game and a good amount of volume going towards him. Burkhead is a little bit more thin of a play, but you can definitely start him in like 14 or 16 team leagues, 12 teams, and it gets really close. he's definitely going to need to score to pay off because he's a guy who's going to get you like 4 or 5 carries in the ground. He's going to have his 4 or 5 targets, and you're going to be looking at that line being like, he was involved, he got some yards, but it was just fine. He's not going to win you the week. He's probably not going to lose you the week. But again, this is in Buffalo, and the Patriots have historically struggled there. They also don't have Gronk to rely on like they used to do. So I'd bench Sony, start White, and Burkhead probably only in deeper leagues. On the Bills side, I guess it depends on the health of Singletary, but let's be honest, just avoid any running back playing New England because it's just not worth it. They've only allowed 3 points to opposing offenses this season, with 0 over the last 9 quarters. Next, we have Chiefs at Lions. And on the Chiefs side, we're just going to have to wait and see again. Last week, Williams was out and McCoy played, but he did hurt his ankle late in the game. Current indications seem to be that it's going to be the same thing this week, but just keep an eye on Roto World throughout the week. And obviously, double check on Sunday. If everyone is active, then it's just a mess, and I'd avoid the situation until we know more about their splits. If Williams is out and McCoy is active, which seems to be the most likely scenario, then you can start McCoy in the flex, but it also depends how much does he practice this week? How much do we think he's going to play in the game? We're going to have to see how involved people expect him to be before we can make a decision on him. On the Lions side, Kerryon Johnson saw his snaps rise from 55% to 75% after they released Anderson, and he was given 21 touches, which is very encouraging that they were willing to give him 20 carries, something we didn't really know if they were willing to do. I wouldn't worry too much about the targets. They jumped out to a nice first half lead, and we know they prefer to run the football, so he should have more targets under a more neutral game script. Ty Johnson is still going to take away some targets. Not that you're ever going to start him, but Ty Johnson's there, and he's going to fill in that Theo Riddick light role, not exactly to the extent Theo had, but he's going to take his 3, 4, 5 targets a game away from Kerryon Johnson. That does not mean Kerryon Johnson won't be involved in the receiving game. It just means he's not a full workhorse. He's getting most of the work on the ground. A good amount of work will come through the air, but not all of it. With all that being said, I still would start Kerryon Johnson in pretty much any matchup going forward. Next game, Panthers at Texans. And for the Panthers, start Christian McCaffrey as always. But note, this matchup is not a cakewalk. The Texans are ranked second in terms of DVOA against the run, and they've allowed the lowest yards per carry to running backs in the league. The thing is, they funneled that production to running backs into the receiving game, so McCaffrey still has monster upside. Just know, not much of it should come on the ground. For the Texans, they have the duo of Hyde and Duke now, and they've been roughly splitting their snaps, with Hyde getting the early downs and Duke getting receiving downs. There's just no need to go there. Duke is averaging 3 targets a game, which you cannot rely on, and then Hyde only has 1 target through 3 weeks. So you're going to need a touchdown for one of them to pay off, and they've only combined for 1 total touchdown through 3 weeks, so I wouldn't be starting either of them. Next, we have Raiders at Colts, and John Gruden said that he wants to get Josh Jacobs more involved as a receiver. Well, no kidding, that's something he should have been doing already. Will he actually do it is the question. I told you to trade high on Jacobs after his big game because most casual fans didn't notice his lack of receiving work in that game. Through 3 weeks, he now only has 3 targets, and he's only caught 1 of them, meaning he now has 9.9 and 4.4 points in full PPR over the last 2 weeks. If they don't get him more involved in the receiving game, then you're rarely going to be able to start him, and it's not like the Raiders are going to win all that many games. When they've been falling behind, he's been coming off of the field. He played 73% of snaps in their week 1 win, then 48% in their week 2 loss, then 42% in their week 3 loss, catching 0 balls in both of the losses. The Colts defense is ranked 6th in DVOA, allowing the 5th lowest yards per carry to running backs, plus the Raiders are 7-point road underdogs. You can't start Jacobs until we see proof that they're willing to use him in the passing game. For the Colts, start Mac as always, especially as a 7-point home favorite, implied to score just under 26 points against a below average defense. Next, we have Chargers at Dolphins. And for the Chargers, start everyone with a pulse. Yes, that also means you can start Justin Jackson. He's looked great this season, and this is one of the two best matchups you can ask for. The Chargers have the highest team total on the week, and they should have no trouble scoring around 30 points. That gives the running backs a great chance to score, and they should be able to get double-digit touches each. So I'd be starting both Eckler and Jackson. I don't expect it to happen, but reports did come out today that Gordon will be returning soon. He's probably not going to return this week, but if he does, then we're just going to have to hear how beat reporters are saying this situation is going to unfold. Because if they turn into a three-headed backfield, it's going to be very, very different. But again, we're just going to have to wait and see. I don't think he's returning this week, but just a heads up, I guess it's possible. For Miami, we're continuing to bench both Drake and Ballage until Drake is traded, if he is ever traded. Washington at Giants is next, and Washington is projected to lose by 3 points on the road and score in the low 20s. This is a fine spot for Peterson. They should be able to keep it relatively close, and the Giants' run defense is nothing to be scared of. He's just way too reliant on touchdowns, so I'd prefer not playing him. You can start Thompson in a full PPR league. Anything shy of full PPR is a little bit thin of a play. For the Giants, assuming that all they do is sign someone from the practice squad, then we're starting Wayne Gulman. I know it's gross, but he's an every down running back who's favored at home. You just have to start players in that situation. However, if they do sign someone, well, we're just going to have to reevaluate this take. So we're going to have to see, did they sign CJ Anderson? Did they sign Jay Ajayi? I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you one thing. If they do sign one of those two players, I'm probably not starting Wayne Gallman this week. Next game is Seahawks at Cardinals. And for Seattle, a lot depends on the status of Rashad Penny. He missed last week's game with a hamstring injury, so his status is definitely going to impact Chris Carson. If he's out, then Carson is probably a must start. If he plays, then I'm still starting Carson, but the upside is definitely lowered, and we're definitely not starting Penny in either scenario. This is a great matchup for pace and for scoring, but know that the Cardinals sell out to stop the run, and they force teams to pass on them. They held Kerryon Johnson and Mark Ingram to bad games, and if you take out the 76-yard rushing touchdown last week, then they held McCaffrey to 23 carries for 77 yards and just 3 for 35 through the air. So the matchup might not be as great as it seems, especially because Carson has struggled this year and has lost 3 fumbles now through 3 weeks. For the Cardinals, start David Johnson as always. Next, we have Bucs at Rams, and the Bucs backfield is just annoying at this point. Ronald Jones is clearly their best back, but they continue to use Barber, and Jones still hasn't seen more than 32% of the snaps in a game. He's had 2 solid games on the ground, and he's been effective when they decide to throw to him, but he's not being used enough to really trust him yet, and really neither is Peyton Barber, especially as 10-point road underdogs. For the Rams, you're basically forced to start Gurley, and the matchup is decent, not elite or anything, but it's a decent matchup. But I don't know how you could feel comfortable about his 14 to 15 touches a week. I also doubt that you have someone better to start, but I guess if you do, if you've got guys, you're really lucky in the draft and you took Eckler late and you took some guys that broke out a little bit behind Todd Gurley, well then start him over Gurley because he's only getting you 14 or 15 touches a week. So he has to score to be worth it. Vikings at Bears is the next game, and this one might be pretty gross. The over-under is set at 38, with the Bears currently 2.5-point home favorites. Dalvin Cook is a must-start in any matchup. I'm just obligated to tell you that you should be tempering expectations whenever your player goes to play in Chicago. For the Bears, I definitely wouldn't start Cohen. He's playing less than 50% of the snaps, and he just isn't involved enough in the receiving game to be worth it. For Montgomery, I'd prefer to bench him because this is a tough matchup, even as 2.5-point home favorites. They're not projected to score very many points, and the Vikings do have a good run defense, so I'd prefer to put him on the bench. but it's going to depend on who you have, who your other options are. You can play him in the flex, but it's not a great play. Next, we have Jaguars at Broncos. And for the Jaguars, start Fournette. He's getting 100% of the snaps, and he's involved in the receiving game. Once he starts scoring, the fantasy points will look a lot better. For the Broncos, they're 3-point home favorites, but the total is really low, and while the Jaguars are better against the pass, they're not bad against the run. Phillip, Lindsay, and Royce Freeman are splitting the snaps right now, and they're basically splitting the touches. There's obviously going to be a slight variation week to week, but they're roughly splitting them. The difference seems to be that Lindsay is the team's goal line back. Lindsay has 9 green zone touches, which is the area from the 0-yard line to the 10-yard line, and then Freeman only has 3. Both are more like really, really low-end running back 2s to high-end running back 3s, and they're basically only flex plays, with the ideal scenario being you've got someone better to start this week. This game could be really ugly with such a low total and both defenses being solid. So it's really tough to hope for a touchdown for your running back when the team's only projected to score 20 or 21 points. So this is another situation where it really just depends what your other options are. If you've got solid options, I play them over Freeman and Lindsay. The Sunday night game is Cowboys at Saints, and Zeke and Kamara are top 5 plays every single week, regardless of the matchup. Pollard went off last week, but that was against Miami, so don't look too much into that. He's not going to get enough volume to be worth starting unless they destroy a team, and that's pretty unlikely to happen this week. The same is true for Murray. Unless they go off, you just can't be starting him until they get Drew Brees back. The final game is Monday Night Football with Bengals at Steelers. The game currently has a 43.5 point total, with the Steelers as 4.5 point home favorites. The Bengals have a really bad run defense, and Connor is a home favorite, so you're definitely starting him. Mixon is also a start, even as a road underdog. His numbers haven't been great this year, and the Steelers do have an above average run defense, but he's capable of producing in any game script given his receiving ability, and I'm honestly not sure the spread should even be 4.5 points in favor of the Steelers. I personally think it should be closer to 3 points, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Bengals won this game outright. So, that's everything you should need answered at the running back position this week. If you have multiple players I listed as starts, or you've run into some bad luck and you only have sits, then either ask your question in the comment section below or look at my rankings at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.